Tansy, everyone, and welcome. We are honored to be in discussion with Swampy Cree author and educator David A. Robertson, creator of 52 Ways to Reconcile, How to Walk with Indigenous Peoples on the Path to Healing. As co-founders of Chapters for Change, and as white settler educators of British, Irish, German, Scottish, Swiss, and French ancestry, we are committed to learning from Indigenous voices and to education for reconciliation as a lifelong practice. David's work anchors our 2026 Chapters for Change theme, which is growth and reconciliation. Ekusani to David for generously sharing his time and space with us today. So Ekusani, David, for being here, for sharing this space with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very happy to have you. So we met on December 1st. You visited the area to come to the literature circle for All the Little Monsters. So that is currently through the District School Board of Niagara, and their Indigenous education team arranged to have you come and speak with us. And we have that book here as well. Highly recommend that one as well. And you took some time to touch a little bit on your new book, 52 Ways to Reconcile, during that meeting. And you had described the book as an activity book. So I wanted you to touch on that, if you can, just a little bit there, David, about what the word activity means to you in the context of reconciliation.
I feel like activity is this action oriented, so I feel like it's like a book that requires not only for someone to read and digest and learn, but to infuse in intentionality in the things that they're doing when it comes to reconciliation
Yeah.
and intentionality and then action. So I often refer to this book as a verb. So
Yeah.
I think reconciliation is also a verb. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's a book that, it's, I think it's nice to read and it's got informative stuff in there, but you don't get really what I would like people to get out of it unless you do things that are laid out in the book for people to follow. And so in that way, the book is, like a starting point.
Yeah.
And then what I want to happen with the book is that for people to kind of take what they've started out doing in the book and to think of their own things to do, because I want I think that reconciliation is not just like a prescriptive thing where I can tell people to do this or that, but it has to be something very personal. So
Mm.
whether people, do like 5 actions in this book or 52 actions or 1 action or 15
Yeah.
actions, eventually motivates them to kind of think of and do their own things. But it's always action oriented. And so that's why I call it an activity book, because it's just activities, things you need to do, whether it's reading is an action, attending something, that's an action, you know, um, so it's just, it's action that creates movement, and movement
Yeah.
is where we want to get to, like, the place where we want to get to requires movement to arrive at the destination, wherever
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. I think that's what I really love about the book too, is that you write so beautifully about the different activities or actions, but you give some context ahead of time, and then it's giving a suggestion of an action that can go along with the specific, theme of the week. And so it's something too where if you fulfill, that action, it's not like it's a one and done. You can even go back to the action and do it again in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's I talk about it often as almost like a choose your own adventure. You know,
Yeah.
I like those when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
I feel like so it's not, there's only a few actions in here that are connected to a specific day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't care if someone does, like, action 17 in the first
Yeah.
week. It doesn't really matter. and people are using it in their own way. It was a book that I wrote that I wanted people to read every week for a year. A lot of people reading it in one day, and then hopefully returning back to it, and then creating
Yeah.
some sort of a game plan. But that's the beauty of it too, is that there's not one way to use it. There's not one way to
Yeah.
read it. I see some schools doing, things where they're posting all the actions on down the hallways, and they have QR codes to download, like
Oh, I
music
love
and
that.
yeah, all those things. And then some schools have like made these like lists of action plans, and they're incorporating like different actions into their daily routines as teachers. So there's different things that like people are using them for, and I think that's the versatility of the book too. It doesn't require any specific way to do things. It's just
Yeah.
take the book and use it as you want, as long as it's motivating some kind of change, in
Mhm.
in little things in every week of the year.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it too, where the whole idea of reconciliation can become very overwhelming, where people don't really know often where to start, or what's expected, and this gives some wonderful suggestions of where to start. um yeah.
Yeah, I think that the starting point is always going to be learning. So
Mhm.
like like for me too, when I wrote this book, is a lot of learning first, like doing a lot of research, and then writing down what I've learned. And in this book, like every chapter has a bit of a context where I've done a bit of work for people, but I'm always requiring them to do a bit more before they
Yeah.
start doing something. And that's important, because I feel like if we walk into this just like blindly doing things, um,
Yeah.
doesn't I don't think it's really that effective. I think it requires motivation to like learn and to research and to read and to make sure that we understand why we're doing the actions that we're doing. And
Yeah.
then once we get to that point, then taking that action, and I think it's much more meaningful and effective if you're doing it from a place of knowledge than just from a
Yeah.
place of like, oh, I know I want to do something. Here's some stuff. I'm just going to do it. I feel
Mhm.
like it's a bit more involved in that way. And so whether it's like binge watching a television show, or learning about the calls to action, whatever it
Yeah.
might be, it requires legwork, and that's learning. And sometimes the action is just learning, like it's watching a
Mhm.
watching a movie or reading a book. But that always, if you have like an action oriented mind, and when it comes to this reconciliation thing, um, even if it is just a week of consuming media, then
Mhm.
hopefully that consumption will lead to positive action.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Even that part where you were touching on, binge watching a show or like a movie. And yeah, that's something that growing up I did with my family. Like those were some quality times with family, was having movie night, and like certain evenings where we would watch a certain show, and where I was really exposed more than I was at school to different social justice issues, and it opened up those conversations in the home. And so I was so thankful for, those moments where I was able to, explore those issues with my family, and that's where kind of the learning began. So definitely a great place to begin, with family as well.
Yeah, I think with family, with community, like it's not like a thing that you do in a vacuum. I think it's
Mhm.
things that you do like as a group, whether it's like a group at school, or whether it's like a family, or whether it's like something you do
Mhm.
within a community or church, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It is a communal movement.
Yeah.
It's not something that we do in silos. I think that
No.
we can take our own actions with the knowledge that other people are doing their own actions too. And then when you have like a community of people who are doing something, and that covers a wide swath of things, because everyone brings their own interests and abilities and
Yeah.
whatever they can to the table, then you have like a bunch of like-minded individuals who are
Yeah.
all doing something to move us towards the same goal. And it's not just one thing that will get us there. So it's all useful. and everyone has value.
Yeah, for sure. And it's beautiful to hear too how like some of the occasions where you've seen these practices being put into place within schools where they're getting students on board because it's something that definitely has been lacking for a long time. So it's wonderful, to see those different communities hopefully coming together too and bringing the learning into the home from there. Was there a specific, I'm just interested if from your own Cree heritage, was there anything that helped to guide you in writing the book or anything that influenced the writing of the book?
Um, I mean, maybe. I feel like there is an element of like I talk about this a lot with my father. But he talked to me about the benefits of like role modeling
Yeah,
and of not being prescriptive in terms of what you t are telling people to do, but to be demonstrative more and to kind of model for people what it looks like to take action, and in that hopefully show people that things are possible.
yeah,
And so my dad called it non-interference. And that is like you don't really interfere with how someone else lives or what they do, but you kind of just try to show them how to live a good way by how you live, or do things in a good way by how you do things. And I think because I've been doing it for so long, this reconciliation thing, it's given me a bit of insight into what are some effective things that you can do to get things done.
mhm,
And so so in that way, I suppose there's a bit of that that Cree sensibility in what I've done. Maybe it is a human sensibility too, but I
yeah,
think it's something that my father kind of demonstrated in his life and taught me. And so I feel like if people see me doing work and like whether it's like writing this book or talking about the book or going to schools or
yeah,
I think hopefully people see me out there just doing work,
yeah,
and maybe they think, well, I mean, maybe Dave's doing this thing, maybe I can do this little thing too.
yeah,
And that probably is more than anything. But other than that, it's just like it's a human imperative, really. It's looking at how we all have a vested interest or should have a vested interest in our collective success as a community,
yeah,
and recognizing that some of us don't have the abilities that others or don't have the opportunities that others have. And then how do we then develop a community that has equity, that has equal access, that has equal opportunity, that is healthier and stronger because of that. And
mhm,
that's the end goal. I think that's what reconciliation really is. It's like it's living in a place where everybody has the equal ability to be successful, and
yeah,
to be respected and to be welcomed, and to have the space to heal. And that's very simple, but it's not always an easy thing to do. But it's a simple concept.
yeah. I think that too, the idea of bringing people together because there has been a loss of community a lot over, the past several years and making those efforts to bring people into space together to have those important conversations so that, viewpoints can be shared and there's a mutual, respect through that sharing that needs to happen so that people, can learn from one another and truly grow from those encounters.
Yeah, I feel like media, like devices, like all these different things,
Yeah.
they kind of are designed in a way to separate us in a,
Hmm.
in some ways. And I feel like they also can be used to connect us if we
Yeah.
think about it in a different way. And I hope that that's what we see that is possible. When we feel like we want to work towards a common goal, it's that it's not to get off our devices, but it's to use them to in a different way, and
Mhm.
utilize the advantages that we have and the tools that are at our disposal to kind of realize this vision, in I think really like profound ways. Like look how mobilizing they can be,
Mhm.
and so, but I do think that like it's not something that happens um, in these little silos that we create, in this separation that is inherent in like in the way that society works today.
Mhm.
Because I think it is often how it works. But I think how do we like use these things to share,
Mhm.
to come together and to learn from one another, and I think that's probably also part of reconciliation is like being able to like actually just sit with each other virtually or in person and to speak with each other, listen, come to an understanding, and a mutual respect.
Yes.
And again, it's like this rudimentary thing, but it's also, I don't know, like it doesn't have to be more complicated than that, really.
Mhm.
Think about like what brought us to the point where we needed to reconcile is because like we didn't see the value in each other. We didn't like
Yeah.
see the value in how, in this case, within the context of this conversation, like how Indigenous people lived.
Mhm.
We just thought like, well, we know a better way. But
Mhm.
what if we actually took the time to just like sit and learn from each other and realize that like, oh, there's things that we can like pick up from one another. There's things that we can learn about how the other person lives, but we don't have to like adopt everything. And we're okay being the way that we are. You're okay being the way that you are. We can still
Mhm.
function together. And it sounds so simplistic, but we just don't do that, you know.
Mhm.
And what if we did though?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like I think this is like this Western approach to living that is like very problematic and has been for centuries. And
Yeah.
I just don't think that's how the world should work. I just don't think that's the way that healthy communities function. I
Right.
don't think anyway.
Yeah. Like it's
I don't know
important.
what the question was there, but I feel like the tangent was like, I don't know, maybe
I think it just comes
helpful.
back to that whole idea of the importance of community and relationships, and that's something that I think has been kind of lost along the way, much like what you were saying, where um like with colonialism, where it's the idea of, one way is the right and only way, and there needs to be more conversations so that people can, open up and learn about different ways of being and the value in honoring those diverse ways of knowing and being.
Yeah, like I think it's like this whole thing with the colonialism is like an imposition of values and ways of living
Yeah,
and a kind of a me first mentality and like
yeah,
you second and like I know what's better for you, and it's very paternalistic
yeah.
and it's just patently false too. I feel like
Hmm.
I have no way of knowing that my way of life is better than yours. It's better, it might be better for me to live that the way that I live,
Yeah.
but like I feel like, I mean, you're doing pretty well yourself in the way that you live. So then maybe there's things that we can learn from each other in coming together, um, but I feel like that coming together doesn't have to be an adoption of like entirely our values and beliefs and traditions and ways of living. Um, I think that in the human connections that we have, there are definitely things that we can influence each other on in positive ways, but it doesn't mean we have to prescribe those positive ways to other people. Yeah, I've definitely been to like mostly like middle schools or high schools where I see that they're using this book in schools. I wrote it for adults, but like the thing is, kids are so smart, and in a lot of ways they're ahead of the game in terms of what we
Yeah.
want to do. Like they really are. If we watch kids and how they interact and the things that they do, they're that's how we should emulate the way that we live our lives, because like they do things in the community.
Hmm.
They might see like diversity. They definitely do, but they just like they see first people, and they interact with each other. They like function they function within each other, within communities, whether it's in the classroom or in their own neighborhoods. And they they work well together, and they tell stories with each other, and they learn from each other, and
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, kids are really the great hope in all of this, and I feel like
Yeah.
we unlearn the things that we should know today from the things we knew that we were when we were kids. Imagine if we all had like this kind of like childlike mentality of
Yes.
like acceptance and like
Yeah.
and like curiosity,
Hmm.
and just like, yeah, just like, I mean, playing with one another, because
Yeah.
we recognize that we're all just kids, we're all just people.
Yeah.
It sounds again, it sounds so simple,
Yeah.
but then as we get older, we lose all of that.
Yeah.
We kind of like we learn all these falsities about each other. We develop these preconceptions for one another. We we build up these barriers between ourselves, and the foundation that we built all this on becomes very shaky.
Yeah.
And part of the path of reconciliation is learning how to break down those barriers by actually taking the time to learn from one another and to make connections with each other. and
Mhm.
and when we do that, we begin to value our diversity. We also recognize that like we have this shared humanity in common, where we're just like, we're all people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, like, and it sounds again, but it doesn't matter that I have darker skin and you have lighter skin. It doesn't matter that
Yeah.
like, that we look different and that we live our lives differently. Like, we 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 share the human condition,
Yeah.
and so all these things together means that we develop these like stronger communities, because we weave ourselves together, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I feel like kids get it, and I feel like adults maybe lose it, and
Mhm.
we have to like unlearn and then relay a foundation, a better foundation that we can
Yeah.
like build things on. And I think that kids really are instructive in that way, and they are really aspirational.
Do you foresee writing a version for younger children at all in the future, or have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, definitely. I've talked with my agent about, and with a publisher about, what this would look like for like younger kids. What would it look like for like, middle grade kids?
Yeah.
It might be, maybe it's like 12 actions a month for for a year, or maybe it's like, an action a month for every school month.
Yeah.
Um, that you can do collectively as a school, or individually within the student body. So I'm thinking about how I can conceptualize that, or just like, even maybe it sounds conceptualized. So maybe it's more like, what are the, and this is the difficulty with 52 ways too, is like, what are 52 actions? Like, not that I couldn't come up with 52, but like, how do we whittle it down to just 52 things? 'Cause originally I had like 90, I think I had 90 something kind of drafted out. So
Yeah.
so then how do you like take all these ideas and like, and put it into like whether it's like four a month for a school year, which would be maybe 40, or is it like, one a month as a student body to make it 10? And so I'm not really quite sure how that will work, but we definitely had conversations over making this into like a younger person's book,
Yeah.
and adapting it, just like we talked about adapting all the little monsters for kids too. It's like, how do you, yeah, I think
Mhm.
part of my job and what I'm kind of struggling with sometimes is like, how do I how do you kind of like take that and make it accessible to like younger people?
Yeah.
Because I think, elementary school kids, for example, um, they do incredible things. You give them a bit of knowledge and just watch the things that they do.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of like take this concept and make it work for, grade 4 kids? Um, so I'm just trying to figure out how to do that. Eventually down the line, you'll probably see a children's adaptation for it. I just don't
Yeah.
know right now how that will look, but when I figure it out, then I'll do it.
Well, thank you so much, David, for being here and sharing about 52 ways to reconcile, and also touching on all the little monsters. The work that you're doing is just phenomenal, and I just feel so blessed to have had this time and space with you today. And yeah, I'm definitely pushing for everyone to be buying a copy of this and working through the activities within their communities, whether it be at home, school, other groups that people are a part of. So yeah, Ekosani, David, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Mm.
Appreciate it.
If you don't want to miss any of our upcoming videos, make sure that you hit the subscribe button below as well as the notifications. And you can also visit our website, chaptersforchange.com, for educational resources and to see what we're up to. See you soon.